Good morning. Ohio's next governor will face huge challenges: the deadly opioid crisis, getting an uneducated population trained for tomorrow's jobs, and wrestling with emotional gun issues. The University of Akron's Bliss Institute of Politics is sponsoring our interviews so you can get a clearer picture who these candidates are and what they stand for. I'm the guy asking the questions. Tom Beres, former veteran senior political correspondent for WKYC-TV in Cleveland. And with me this morning is former Democratic Congressman and Cleveland Mayor Dennis Kucinich, who, for better or worse, now it can be told, helped me land my first job in Cleveland. The storyline there, when he was Cleveland Mayor, I was reporting in Dayton. News director said, go up and find out what's happening in Cleveland. We did a very long interview, and you said some pretty over-the-top things, even by your own standards. Put them on my audition tape to the news director at Channel 3 and said, great interview, how'd you do that? So this could be something else that your opponents will hang around your neck. You brought that Beres guy to Cleveland. Thank you for being here this morning.
Tom, it's good to be with you, and here we are again, 40 years later.
Yeah, nothing's changed. You are the master of the political makeover. Do you have one more reinvention, comeback in you?
Tom, I expect to live to be 130, so I'm midway through my career.
So to people who might look at the calendar and recognizing that age is just a meaningless number and say, whoa, do we really want to entrust a state with these huge, enormous problems to a fellow who's 71 years old and in tip-top condition, I'm quite certain, but does he have the vitality and the vision and what it takes for Ohio to get some breakthroughs here?
My guess is that I could beat most of the people running for governor in a sprint any day. Beyond that, the experience that I have that goes back to being a Cleveland City Councilman, clerk of the Cleveland Municipal Court, state senator, U.S. House of Representatives for 8 terms, has prepared me through being involved with government at all levels to being able to take that experience and offer it to the people of Ohio as someone who has the background to be able to run a state of 11 million people.
So what would be different or what would be better about a chief executive, Dennis Kucinich, in 2018 and 2019 from the chief executive, Dennis Kucinich, that I met back in the late 1970s?
Well, the experience that I have. I mean, we're talking about another 40 years of political experience. We're talking about the capacity and the vision to be able to chart a course for a state that needs help in job creation, in environmental protection, in safer communities, in education and healthcare, and a wide range of issues. And I have a background now in all of that. I bring to the governor's race a perspective that very few people have, because I've been so involved at a local, state, and federal level. And that gives me the capacity to be able to design the programs, to bring the people in, to be able to see the connections between government at all levels, and to be able to make things happen, which, as in Cleveland, I've been able to do.
Latest poll numbers, and there aren't that many polls these days, latest poll numbers had you and Mr. Cordray neck and neck at 21%, with a whole lot of people who still haven't decided. Do you view yourself as an underdog in this race still?
Every race I've ever been in, I've been an underdog. And but I represent underdogs. I represent people who are striving for better wages, for decent jobs, for educational opportunities, for health care, for clean water, for safe neighborhoods. So, yeah, I mean, that's who I represent. That's where I come from. I mean, I live off 117th in Cleveland, in a neighborhood of underdogs.
So you are proposing some very bold and ambitious ideas, including trying to ban semi-automatic military weapons, stopping oil and gas drilling in Ohio, cracking down, perhaps eliminating charter schools, and we'll talk more about those coming up. But Ohioans seem to like more comfortable, middle-of-the-road types, managerial types as their governor. Aren't you arguably kind of too far out there for Ohio's political comfort zone?
Actually, I'm the person Ohioans want for this moment. Somebody's going to shake up a lethargic state government, a state government that's become corrupt because of the relationship between the political parties and interest groups. Only someone who literally comes from the outside, who isn't part of that system, can upend it and make it work in the interests of the people. So the idea that the status quo is going to be of service to the people of Ohio belies the fact that you have so many people who are paying confiscatory rates for health insurance. You have so many people who are struggling to get a decent wage. We ought to have a $15 minimum wage. You have so many people who are now concerned about their children in schools being safe, and yet we have an NRA A-rated candidate, who's my principal opponent in this race, who has doubled down on his position on assault weapons. Look, I'm the one candidate who has the political independence to cause the system to work for the people. That's the motto of our campaign, by the way, Tom. It's a hashtag, power to we the people. And
that has a real throwback ring to it, though, you know.
How so? A throwback to the Constitution of the United States?
Right. Ohio has elected Republicans to be 6 of their last 7 elected choices for governor. How do you overcome that, obviously, as a Democrat with all of these deeply entrenched and largely Republican interests? I mean, a lot of people admire your noble and perhaps long shot courage, but boy, the guy needs a reality check.
Are you kidding? I'm going to tie in this race. How do you call that a long shot? I mean, this race is a toss-up. And one of the reasons that I'm
talking about the changes, not the election.
But we want to make sure. We are talking about the election here, and I just want to be very certain that I state that the reason why it's likely that I can win this race is that I don't polarize. I can attract Republicans. I can bring in those people who voted for Donald Trump because they felt the Democratic Party abandoned them. That constituency is a middle class, a working class constituency. That's where I come from. I'm theirs, and they know that. And so because of that connection, the political parties become less important to people. They want a governor who's going to be for them. It's not, have a Democratic governor, a Republican governor. They want a governor who's going to be for them. Am I a Democrat? Yes. But I'm not a stooge of a political party. I'm not a party hack. I'm somebody who represents people without regard to what the party wants. And I think people are looking for that. And that's why Republicans will be attracted to a candidate who isn't going to be a robot on behalf of a party agenda.
Do you think Republicans, as they eye the outcome of the primary, are more eager or would rather have you as the primary winner candidate or Mr. Cordray?
Well, you know what? I'm going to let I'm going to address myself to Democrats. I can win because I have the capacity of bringing back the Trump voters. I can win because I can energize the base. I have an abundance of energy to be able to reach out to people and to inspire them, Tom, to vote. I don't know there's another candidate in this race who has shown a demonstrated ability to be able to energize people and inspire them and motivate them to vote. And I think that this polarized approach, which the Democratic Party seems to revel in, is a dead end. You can't win if you attack Republicans. You have to provide a better argument as to why you're the ones going to bring jobs, as to why you're the one who's going to raise wages, as to why you're the one who's going to protect the environment and create safer communities by getting rid of these assault weapons.
So right now, a lot of the newspaper coverage of this race frames it as a two-candidate race in the Democratic Party, and the main issue is guns, and Mr. Kucinich has the upper hand because he is more in the moment of what people are thinking. Do you think that's oversimplified, though? Do you really think the gun issue is the uppermost issue in most people's minds at the moment?
I think that, having participated in the march where there were 20,000 people in Public Square in Cleveland, and my running mate, Tara Samples, participated in the march in Akron, the issue of public safety, of the safety of children in their schools, of parents worrying about dropping their kids off to school and getting a call from school, there's been an incident. The concern that people have about safety in public spaces, about being at a mall or a church or a concert and having to worry about their safety. Yeah, this is a paramount issue in this race, and the fact that my opponent Richard Cordray is the one who knocked down the assault weapons ban in Cleveland, who went to, and which he didn't have to do, who went to the U.S. Supreme Court, didn't have to do that, on behalf of the NRA, and knocked down the city of Chicago's gun laws, which affected laws all over the country. He set the stage for his own problem here. He held rallies on the State House lawn where people had assault weapons right a few steps from where the governor's office is. I mean, on my behalf, I didn't know through 16 years in Congress and 2 years in the state Senate that this F rating from the NRA was going to somehow become a political matter in 2018.
So you view that as a badge of honor there?
That, absolutely. I'm proud of my F rating with the NRA, because what it tells the people of Ohio is that I cannot be influenced by an interest group that has basically a death grip on the state legislature and on my principal opponent in this race.
Let's talk about the effort that you and your running mate are making to try to convince cities to pass resolutions, to encourage lawmakers, to allow individual communities to have their own gun regulations. By my check, there are 938 cities and villages in the state of Ohio. How many of them have thus far passed such a resolution?
We've had a handful. This is something that communities have to decide on.
But how many of them do you think it would take to realistically motivate the legislature to do something?
Look, keep in mind, Tom, communities wouldn't have to do that if Richard Cordray hadn't led the effort in Cleveland to overturn an assault weapon ban that Cleveland had passed in 1991. Now let's go back. What we're doing is we're communicating the information to local communities, asking them in advance of Tara Samples and I taking office to indicate their willingness to create the discussion on a local level. That's happening around the state. This discussion is happening. So, but we're going forward nevertheless and making this one of the principal issues in this campaign. You know why? Because we get what these young people are saying. The young people around the state, their future is at risk. They're worried in their classrooms as to whether or not they're going to be safe. It's a problem of not just safety, but it's a problem where kids are trying to learn and they're distracted. All the masses of young people around the country who have turned out on this issue, that needs to be respected. So that's where the future of America is headed.
The same poll that had a snapshot of your race, I believe also the same poll has done something in regard to Ohioans' opinions about gun control. There are now a majority of people who favor, and in both parties, at least if the poll is correct, who favor a ban on military assault kind of weapons. Has this reached a tipping point?
Oh, it absolutely is at a tipping point, which is why Mr. Cordray's doubling down recently in an interview with the Columbus Dispatch becomes significant. If he doesn't get that the public has totally moved in a different direction, Democrats and Republicans alike, then he's going to he wouldn't be the worst candidate for the party to put up in November, because all you need is a slight shift on the part of Mr. DeWine, who had a better grade than Mr. Cordray did in 2010, and that issue becomes the paramount issue in November. So I'm best situated as a Democrat to recognize the public sensibilities here. I've been leading on this issue of getting rid of assault weapons because parents and young people are concerned. And so because of that, my campaign is gaining momentum. And because of that, there's a pretty good chance that I'll be the nominee of the party if people turn out in March, or in May, according to what we're hearing, based on their interest in this issue. Because Mr. Cordray has committed himself to the NRA's agenda on assault weapons.
Moving to another issue or other topics here. Do we have to? Obviously, you're getting lots of mileage out of this. Donald Trump has been in office about 15 months. Do you think, as a result of what he's done or not done in that time, Ohio and its residents are better off or worse off? And give me some examples why you think the way you do.
He has yet to deliver on his promises. The one thing that he did that I agree with is putting up tariffs to protect steel and aluminum. It'd be good to do that with both finished products as well as raw imports.
So to all those surveys that suggest Yes, there may be some restoration of some steel making and some aluminum making jobs, but there'll be more jobs lost in other industries that make products from those metals. And the result of a trade war, we're all going to be paying more for many of the items and commodities we buy.
Look, I helped save a steel mill in Cleveland. And we rallied the community.
You're taking credit for ArcelorMittal still being there?
I'm taking credit for saving that mill, you bet, and the people have given me credit for it because I rallied the community and blocked the closing of the blast furnace, which would have meant the end of that mill. People know that. So, no, the workers are the ones who saved the mill because they were there and kept it going. I created the opening to do that. Now let's move forward. Steel is important to Cleveland. It's important to Ohio. And we need every break we can get. And so, yes, it still is responsible directly and indirectly for tens of thousands of jobs in this state. So yes, I am for that. Now, do I agree with Donald Trump on everything? Absolutely not. I disagree that we're still at war in various places. I disagree with him on immigration. I disagree with him on building the wall. These are things that I've spoken out about
But
publicly.
you don't fear the consequences of a trade war?
Look, our state has been damaged mightily by NAFTA, by the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, by China trade. Our state hasn't benefited from that. We've lost manufacturing jobs, Tom. I have people living in my neighborhood who over the years, they worked in steel, automotive, aerospace, and shipping, and what we've seen is a steady decline in Ohio. That's why Ohio, relative to other states, hasn't grown, because of these trade agendas, which frankly, a lot of it came out of Democratic administrations. So, I'm for Ohio. I'm for our industries. We need to hold on to what we have and build forward. I'm not ready for America to get out of steel, automotive, aerospace, or shipping, because they're part of our strategic industrial base. They're important to protect the country. They're also important. We're going to rebuild the infrastructure we need. We ought to do it with U.S. steel. And to defy this international trade structure that says that, well, we can't do that because it's against trade laws. We have to rebuild Ohio, do it with American steel made from Ohio, and get the economy moving. And so anything that moves the economy forward and comes out of this administration, if it's good for Ohio, I'll be with them. If it's bad for Ohio, I won't.
What is your position on the president's infrastructure plan, which turns out to involve much less federal money than he was offering, and puts more on the back of the states and the private sector?
It's totally inadequate. According to, years ago, the American Institute of Architecture said America needs about, at minimum, $3 trillion worth of infrastructure rebuilding. If you parcel that out to Ohio infrastructure needs are probably in the area of $90 to $100 billion. Now, how are we going to meet that? The president's plan is for $200 billion nationally. That's just a drop in the bucket. Now, I don't want to see infrastructure privatized. That's part of the president's plan. What we have to do is we have to have a federal-state match, and the federal government should be providing 75 to 80%. The state should provide another amount, and the locality smaller amounts. We need to rebuild our Ohio infrastructure, whether it's from northern Ohio, bridges over 271 and 77, whether it's in southern Ohio, the Brent Spence Bridge, which connects Kentucky and Ohio, the Western Hills Viaduct in Hamilton County. In Stark County, there's a bridge that carries like 80,000 cars a day. We need to rebuild our infrastructure. And we need to, and the president's plan is absolutely insufficient to do it. So Congress needs to step it up. We need to plus up the amount. We need to be talking about trillions of dollars. It's an opportunity for an FDR-style New Deal program, which puts hundreds of thousands of people, even millions nationally, back to work, and primes the pump of the economy in doing that.
But given that the president's proposal, meager as it is, it obviously puts a lot of the responsibility on the state. Does the state have significantly more resources to devote to infrastructure improvement?
The state has, you can do 5% of the biennial budget for financing these programs. The state continually issues bonds and then retires them. We may have a few $billion capacity. That money should be used and spent for infrastructure. We should be able to leverage it, though. The state does not have the resources at present, given our current economy, to be able to refurbish or rebuild the infrastructure as we need to do it. So what would I do as governor? I would go to the people of the state with a new bond issue that would be over and above what's constitutionally permitted, ask people to pass a constitutional amendment that would enable us to exceed the current limit and to put Ohio back to work rebuilding our infrastructure. It'll be a massive business investment. It'll create all kinds of jobs.
There'd be no additional tax component with that?
Well, the component would be to retire the bonds, but if you put more people working, you have more tax revenue to do it. So I think a lot of the extra costs would be offset by an economy that starts to be primed. And so the whole idea is to have a governor with the vision to get people back to work at least at $15 minimum wage for trades, Davis-Bacon level wages, to rebuild our economy, to rebuild water systems, sewer systems, roads, bridges. If you're driving along the roads right now and you're hitting a chuckle, this is a representative of the fact we haven't invested in infrastructure.
Driving on a washboard.
Absolutely.
All right. So moving on to an immigration topic. Several big Ohio cities have their own programs or organizations to actively recruit. To actively recruit and try to persuade immigrants to move to those cities to replace their vanishing population. Ohio's population growth is flat to the point where we're in danger of losing one, some say perhaps two, congressional seats. Should Ohio launch some sort of a campaign to woo, to encourage, to try to get more immigrants to settle here, especially those who are better educated and more entrepreneurial?
As governor, I'll open wide the arms of official Ohio to welcome in people to our state, to be a state that encourages people to come here to live and to establish, to set up businesses, to create jobs. I'll also take an approach to encourage students to stay here, because one of the problems is that young people are leaving. And we need to do that by having 2-year free public college at a public college university, first 2 years free, and to be able to come up with a program to help young people be able to get out of the debt they're in for their student loans. And so I've already, started.
What would that involve? A tax credit?
No,
or
here's what we do.
Yeah.
The state would contact all the major student loan issuers and bundle loans and create a write-down. You write down the loans, the state finances the retirement of those loans, and you create programs for public service where people pay off their loans through public service. And you substantially reduce the amount of exposure which students have to their outstanding loans. They'll want to stay in Ohio. You provide them with a whole range of public service that they can contribute over a year or two, and it's a win-win situation. The issuers get money that they wouldn't get otherwise because the default rates.
Are any other states doing something like this, to your knowledge?
I don't know, but this is what I think Ohio ought to do.
Okay. Ohio right now has more than 100,000 jobs that are going begging because the employers can't find enough qualified workers to put in them. I think there are multiple studies that have been done that say by the year 2025, Ohio's going to have to produce more than 1 million new college graduates or people with postgraduate trainings. Would that be a priority for a Kucinich administration, and is it doable? How would you try to educate so many people so fast?
Well, if we're talking 2025, that would be 6 years.
6.5, 7 years, yes.
From the start of a Kucinich administration. Our focus will be on the economy and all of the areas of the economy, including making sure that we have well-trained people. The way that we train our people, you have to start with public elementary and secondary education, because it's, that's the farm team of our economy. We bring in young people, and we make sure that public education is adequately funded. We make sure that young people have a chance to go to college, 2-year tuition free at a public college university. You make sure that there's incentives to complete school, that people aren't strapped with debt. You make sure that there's extra economic incentives available in science, technology, engineering, and math to keep people in Ohio. So you look at a whole continuum of education that in and of itself for an individual is sufficient, but for providing the businesses, we work with business to say, okay, what are the jobs of the future here? We work with universities such as Akron and Cleveland State and Ohio State and Athens and Toledo, the great universities of our state and more. And what you do is you make sure that the technology incubators, once they create the job opportunities and license or sell them to the private sector to keep going, you find a way to fit the jobs of the future with the educational program. So we're educating our young people to be prepared to be part of the economy of the future. So yeah, I mean, there has to be, there's a mismatch right now. This is one of the reasons why businesses are concerned they can't get the help they need. But we can do that, but we have to do it prospectively. And I'm ready to have that leadership that combines the needs, the evolutionary needs of developing these skills, and to have it fit with the businesses so that we can move the economy forward with Ohioans.
So you have a lot of aggressive, ambitious plans that perhaps to many sound like they have potential. Yet the other partner in this process is the legislature, Republican-controlled, may still be Republican-controlled regardless of the new governor. Critics would say the legislature's been unduly preoccupied with a lot of hot-button personal behavior, social, cultural kinds of things, gun regulations or deregulations. Should Ohio have a new official dog? How do you get the legislature to be more focused on meaningful topics like job creation, education, health care, instead of the, maybe some would say, less transformational agenda that they have now? I mean, what could you do to reach across?
Well, I just want to make it clear that I have a Beagle Basset that I would offer as a
prospective state dog.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I have no trouble working with Republicans. This campaign to me isn't about Democrat versus Republican. It's about how we may be of service to the people of Ohio, because people of Ohio want results. I'm not in the polarization, Tom. Now, there are differences in economic philosophy. I understand that. But I think Ohioans want a governor who has the energy and the willingness to be able to rally the people on health care for all, on education for all, on jobs for all. I'm pragmatic. I can compromise, but I'll tell you this, that the people are waiting for the leadership to push things forward. And I think, the people who are looking for job opportunities, they're Democrats, they're Republicans. The people who want higher wages are Democrats and Republicans. The people who are strapped with higher premiums, co-pays, and deductibles from these insurance companies are Democrats and Republicans. The people who are concerned about the future of their children and their education are Democrats and Republicans. We have to start addressing Ohio as a unified whole instead of a number of pockets, Democrats here, Republicans there. I think in terms of looking at all Ohioans and moving together. And because I take that approach, I think it'll be easier for me to work with Republicans. But frankly, if I'm leading the ticket in November, there'll be a lot more Democrats elected because I have a vision and the energy to be able to rally people to say this is the agenda and vote for those individuals who will support it. And those who don't, well, we'll talk to them after November.
Regardless of whether you're leading the ticket or not, do you see a blue wave coming this November, or are Democrats maybe overconfident in that regard?
People of Ohio are not going to go for somebody who's Republican light. Given a choice between a status quo Democrat, a sleepy status quo Democrat, and somebody who is dynamic and ready to challenge that status quo, I think that in a primary, people will go with the person who wants to challenge the status quo. In a general election, if you have Republican light and a real Republican, people will go for the real Republican. That's always the case. This is why the Democrats failed again and again and again in Ohio, because they haven't given people a clear choice.
They don't differentiate themselves enough?
That's absolutely right. People,
right.
Why, Tom? For example, when I was elected mayor of Cleveland, I defeated a Republican incumbent, When I was elected to the state Senate in '94, I was one of the only Democrats in Ohio who defeated the Republican incumbent. When I was elected to the U.S. Congress, I defeated the Republican incumbent. Did I do it by pretending that I was Republican in some areas? Absolutely not. I gave people a real agenda, so if there's going to be a blue wave, that it has to come from a true blue Democrat.
Some other topics. There's a push, or at least a serious discussion in some circles now about Ohio. Should it have a right-to-work law? Most of our neighboring states have one. Proponents of it say we need it to compete. Obviously, it would be a vicious political battle if something like that were seriously considered. I bet I know the answer, but what are your thoughts about a right-to-work law?
Well, let me tell you, it won't be a vicious political battle if I'm elected, because there won't be any question about the position of state government. Right to work is simply, I call it right to work for less. It's an attack on workers' rights. I stand firmly for the right to organize, the right to collective bargaining, the right to strike, the right to decent wages and benefits, the right to a safe workplace, the right to sue an employer if they maintain an unsafe workplace, the right to a secure retirement, the right to be able to participate in the political process. I see workers' rights as being human rights. And any attempt to bring a right-to-work agenda into Ohio will be slammed down. And I'll rally the people of this state, workers and who are organized and non as well, to move people forward. As governor, I'll be signing executive orders to facilitate that right to organize.
You've already mentioned this, but just to underscore it here, the possibility of a step-by-step approach to a $15 minimum wage. You would support of that?
I'll do more than that. I mean, I'm saying right now that upon election as governor, I'll sign an executive order that every state employee will be entitled to a $15 an hour at a minimum. Every person who has a state contract.
No intermediate steps all the way to 15?
No, there's no reason to do that. Yeah. The time, you know, the temporization on this, which I've studied, the temporization is causing people to lose their buying power. A $15 minimum wage is another one of those things that helps to move prime the pump of an economy. We have a 70% consumer economy, Tom. We get people, put a little bit more money into people's hands, they'll spend it and start to have a better life for themselves and their family. I'm going to go right for a $15 minimum wage, but to do it, yes, I'll present that to the legislature, but I can set the standard by making sure that state employees have, and anyone who's doing business with the state, wants a state contract, will, in order to have a state contract, I'll sign an executive order that they'll be required to pay their workers no less than $15 an hour. So, and we can do a lot towards that, and I think that Ohioans, and particularly those who will be voting in this primary, who are concerned about their own standing, will know there's a governor who not only supports this, but is ready to model it as, within state government. And then how do we get the rest of the state to do that? That's where leadership comes in. Mm-hmm. That's where we say, hey, you have to recognize that people are struggling to make ends meet, that what people are making right now is not sufficient to support families. And $15 is a living wage, and it ought to be where we start. And so, I've thought about this and talked to people, and the more I think about it, that's what we ought to aspire to.
So never mind the incremental approach. Let's go for the whole.
Okay, if you want to do it over a couple of years, we can negotiate that. But I'm saying the goal is $15, and I'd go for that immediately.
Okay. We don't know what's happening behind the corporate curtain there, but at least on paper, Columbus is still in the running for the Amazon super duper second headquarters and all of the jobs that would bring. Do you think Columbus has a legitimate shot?
Look, the state should do everything, do what it can to bring in new business. How much you give away,
Well, that's the question.
Yeah,
Is there a line that you draw and you say we offer lots of incentives to a prosperous company, but is there a point where enough is enough?
I mean, just at some point, you always have to draw a line, otherwise you end up being a sucker. So, Ohio under Kucinich administration, we're going to be involved in job creation. And job creation, by the way, it doesn't depend just on giving away the state's money. It's taking the state's money into incubating technologies at our universities and licensing and selling those technologies to make the economy move, to create the jobs of the future.
Talking jobs a little bit more, Governor Kasich is proud of boasting that on my watch, Ohio and Jobs Ohio has helped create 450,000 private sector jobs, yet the flip side, Ohio has been behind the national state's average for job creation for 63 months in a row. Do you believe Jobs Ohio has been a success or failure, and will Jobs Ohio have any role in a Kucinich administration?
Well, the Jobs Ohio program, which came about through the privatization of liquor control, has been a marching band and chowder society for middle management types who have received six-figure incomes in a program that lacks transparency and can't really show, how they're spending the money. So what I would do is to deprivatize the liquor control department, to use that money to support small business, and again to create these technologies. And I want to say that many of the technology incubators have already created the jobs. They're waiting for someone to come forward and take the ideas moving forward. Ohio has great potential here, but we can't do it by taking a political approach or a patronage approach to jobs that involve the economy. You have to see results. And Jobs Ohio, what's the results? That's what they say, but show me. And I don't think they've shown anybody, except one thing we do know is they've paid people excessive six-figure salaries in a program that really, I don't know.
So you think it hasn't delivered what the governor promised?
Not at all, no.
10 years ago, Ohio voters approved an idea to clamp a lid on interest rates that could be charged by payday lenders. Here we are 10 years later, and the lenders are still offering the same kind of products at exorbitant, some cases 591% interest rates on loans. The legislature is looking at what to do about it now, set of circumstances. What should the legislature do? There's, I believe, a proposal that would cap interest rates at 28% a year. Do you support that particular bill, or do you have another idea?
The payday lending industry is out of control, period. If there's anything that proves that banks need to be of service to people in our cities more so, it's the fact that payday lenders have charged confiscatory rates. Now, I want to say, Tom, that the Consumer Finance Protection Board had a payday lending rule, which was years in the making. It was put up, but then it wasn't implemented. When Richard Cordray left his post, the payday lenders were able to essentially knock out all of the protections which were being developed for not just people in Ohio, but nationally. You have 5 of the major payday lending companies, the lenders, are now wreaking havoc with millions of American consumers
but Mr. Cordray did point out
who have billions at stake.
But Mr. Cordray did point out correctly, I believe, that you voted for legislation that helped.
In 1996, I was one of 32 members of the state Senate who said, "Okay, we'll give them a chance to become involved in lending." But what's happened since then? We're talking 22 years ago here. Since then, the industry has become rapacious, has basically been stealing from American consumers, and the one person, the cop on the beat for the whole country, deserted his post, walked off the beat. Richard Cordray walked away from this. Now, I will tell you that position of Consumer Finance Protection Board, the head of it, in some cases for all Americans was much more important than the governor of Ohio, and yet he abandoned that post to run for governor. And you know what? He gave the keys to the Consumer Finance Protection Board to the Trump administration, which has proceeded to wreck that and to hold at risk millions of consumers who are losing billions of dollars to the interest rates to these predatory lenders. So, you want to draw an equivalency here? One of 32 state senators who in '96 voted for a bill, or the person who was in charge, who was the guard at the gate, who was the watchdog, who walked away and let these predators come in. I mean, I'm ready to make that comparison.
Everybody in public life, I think, at one time to make votes that they live to regret. I mean, you would have to admit that, right?
I would say that that predatory lending has become an egregious problem, and that as governor of Ohio, I have said that I have a strong consumer program to be able to address the needs of consumers who are getting cheated by these predatory lenders. Absolutely right. But I will tell you, Tom, Mr. Cordray has not been held accountable for his abandonment of that post.
Switching subjects one more time. Some faithful Democrats, cringe at your presence as it was on Fox News. How could he be up there mixing and mingling with those people who had such abhorrent views? What did you learn being in an environment where most of the people you worked with, or at least appeared with, held political positions that were polar opposite of yours?
Well, first of all, I want to point out that we're in a studio here, that right outside that studio, there's a sign that says Fox News. I don't know what that has to do with this interview, but I hope that it doesn't mean that...
Well, for the record, to clarify, Channel 8 has a satellite bureau down there, so it's not Fox News, it's
well,
Fox News.
I just want to...
Well, you raised the question, I'm explaining.
Okay, thank you for doing that. I agreed to go on Fox, not because I changed my mind about anything. During my time in Congress, Fox would invite me on, and I'd be on, and they would, and I'd be ripped up for anything that I said. Now
you were the progressive punching bag.
Well, I'm never a punching bag. I
punch back.
I punch back. But when I joined, when I was asked to join the network, it was under these terms. Look, Dennis, we don't agree with much of anything that you say, but we'd like you to come on so that you can have a point of view to express to people. And the way I look at it, it's easy to preach to the choir, but the real test should be, do you have the ability to communicate with people who might disagree with you? How do you change people's minds unless you reach out to them and you expose them to your own point of view? And so being on Fox gave me the opportunity to reach out to an audience that most Democrats have never been in contact with. And because that's one of the reasons why, Tom, I have a chance to be the next governor of Ohio, because I have a familiarity with that kind of give and take that comes from being challenged.
You don't think any of your remarks made you an apologist for President Trump in some ways? I think there was, the deep state is working to harm him. You don't think you came across as an advocate for President Trump in some cases?
I'm an advocate for the U.S. presidency. I'm an advocate for the U.S. presidency. When President Obama was in his final months of office, people in the State Department and the Pentagon took it upon themselves to attack Syria after President Obama and John Kerry came up with a peace agreement. I mean, what happened there? Everyone remembers after 9/11, there were elements in state and intelligence and the Pentagon who prevailed on President Bush to attack Iraq. It turned out to be wrong and a lie. I flushed that out before anyone else did. So I'm aware of how Washington works. And I see this as a usurpation of the office of the president. And so, yeah, I defend the Constitution of the United States, whether I'm holding office or not.
So it wasn't President Trump personally?
No, absolutely not.
All right, you raised a question about Syria. Many people looked at those images of your several trips to Syria with President Assad, who many people consider a war criminal for bombing and gassing and killing his own people and children. And a lot of people just think those trips were unnecessary and inappropriate.
Well, look, I work for peace, and I met with leaders from around the world.
Well, I know you'll march into hell for a heavenly cause.
Thank you.
But what got accomplished by your trips?
Well, actually,
did you just give him more legitimacy?
Actually, you can go to the interview I did with President Assad on Fox, and during that interview, for the first time, he came forward and said he was going to get rid of his chemical weapons because I pressed him on that. So, if you watch the interview, you'll see the approach and the tone that I've taken. I think that it's really important for those of us who understand foreign policy to try to work to avert war. And of course, in order to do, and I've done that. I mean, I have a 16-year record in Congress, and I have a number of awards for my work for peace to prove it. Including from an Akron organization where, in the city we're in right now. And so, yes, it's important to work for peace. And
so you don't regret making those trips?
Absolutely not.
Or appearing with him?
No. I mean, I work for peace. And if you're going to do that, if you work for peace, inevitably, you're going to be meeting with people with whom you have a profound disagreement in the way that they govern. That's the nature of it. And so I have been involved throughout my entire career in Congress in working to bring people together who have strong differences of opinion This is why I can be a successful governor.
Even allowing for the good intentions, weren't you overstepping your role as perhaps negotiating foreign policy
No,
for the
I
country?
wasn't. I was not negotiating foreign policy. As a member of Congress, we are called upon to have to vote on issues relating to various governments. And we have the right under the constitutional speech and debate clause to get information. And that's what I did. And sometimes other countries would contact me to let me know, and I wouldn't talk to them until I had clearance from the Chief Counsel of the House. And under the speech and debate clause, any member of Congress...
So you didn't step over the line?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
I'm very conscious of the constitutional responsibility of Congress, which is why I repeatedly invoked Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. It says only Congress has the power to declare war.
Right.
And so in connection with that constitutional obligation, I have sought to be able to get information that would make it significant, that would help Congress make its decisions. Now, I want to go one step further. With respect to Syria, now the Trump administration is starting to understand that we should take a different direction.
All right, completely turning a page here. If you're elected, would your wife Elizabeth have a particular mission, role, assignment, job in your administration?
My wife Elizabeth is brilliant. She has a particular expertise in an area called regenerative agriculture, and to help our farmers be able to help our family farms to be more profitable. And one area in which we can do it, and this is something that Elizabeth's been working on, is to have more cover crops, to have farmers be able to be involved in a program that would draw down the carbon. You know, you can measure carbon content in the soil, and to draw that down and to measure it and monetize it and pay farmers to be involved in actually helping to improve our global climate through sequestering more carbon. So I think, you know, Elizabeth's background in agriculture is going to be something that is going to be essential in helping me as governor develop programs.
So you've already got a mission for her.
Well, look, she has a broad intellectual capability, and she's someone who I rely on for advice on everything.
She keeps you sharp discussing things, I have a feeling.
That's one way of saying that.
Yeah, or in line or something.
You bet, and I love her.
So again, you know, too many questions, not enough time. Didn't really get to opioids. Didn't really get to fracking. But I'd like to ask you for a single word or phrase answer as our walk-off thought here. As we sit here today, Ohio's single biggest, most serious problem is?
There is no single biggest problem. It's job creation. It's getting rid of assault weapons. It's ending fracking, preserving our water, protecting clean water. This is our greatest asset and our resource. We have to protect it, and I'm dedicated to doing that by stopping the fracking and stopping these deep injection wells.
All right. Thank you very much for coming by,
Tom,
and good luck on May 8th.
Kucinich.com.
Well, we'll be back next Wednesday, April 11th, with a twofer. Both, as some people say, front runners. Republican Attorney General Mike DeWine around 2:45, and Democrat former Director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Richard Cordray, about 4. And so our mic drop thought, you took the time to watch this. Please take time to early vote or vote in person May 8th. Have a good weekend.
Hi, I'm Billy Pays here with Real Fake Organs, the organ specialist. These organs are made to be perfect and also a part of you. The organs are new, clean, and everything that you need. Don't just buy a new organ, buy a real fake organ. Hello, science enthusiasts. I'm Hayden Burkholder, and welcome to another episode of 300 Seconds of Science.